But let's go from one controversial subject to potentially another one. An NK game where you shoot American soldiers. This one's for you, Toby.
Oh, heavens. Right, Hunting Yankee is a game from a North Korean studio where it appears to be from a propaganda game where you shoot American soldiers and get points. A sort of hunting game. And while it may seem a bit... I mean, my first reaction was, this is a bit off, this isn't very nice, but in the end, how's that different to the Homefront games or any Call of Duty ever?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, you can take the stance of, oh, it's North Korea, they're all mental and being controlled by everyone. But in the same vein, you've got games like Wolfenstein that was based around killing Nazis. Or you've got that level in Call of Duty where you killed civilians, or, you know, loads of other examples. Like Toby said, all the Call of Duty games, it's one side killing the other. What's the difference? Is it just because, oh, it's Americans, we can't kill the Americans? Well, yeah, you can.
Please
Please
don't.
I mean, you know, not all of them.
Oh, thank you. Okay, slight clarification there, all right?
No, I think when people talk about a race or a group of countrymen or countrywomen, they generally mean just the people in charge of it. Don't worry, George.
I appreciate that. I'll just put my little opinion on this. If this is just like every other shit game that comes out on Steam, forgive my language, but I barely even acknowledge this thing's existence. It's whatever. Who cares?
I think the difference here between the examples that were given earlier is the relevance and the setting. So Homefront, for instance, is an alternate history setting, albeit slightly more advanced in the future, blah, 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 blah. You know, Wolfenstein is an alternate history in the past setting. Whereas this was modern day setting. This is pretty much like if America released, well, they did, didn't they? You had America's Army, and wasn't Full Spectrum Warrior originally a training thing?
Yes, it was.
But it's very much like, because obviously that conflict was already going on in those examples. It's very much like America. Oh, actually, no, I need to not say America. It's very much like a developer who are based in America releasing a game where you bomb the eastern half of Asia.
Was that in one of the Modern Warfare games where you shot up churches or something?
In Resistance, there was a blown out church from Manchester. That really was quite a
I remember there was one COD game you were like in a plane or something that was bomb the mosques or something. I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Whoa.
I would
don't
be,
know about that.
because if that was a thing, that would have made a big deal at the time.
Yeah, no,
and we would have all known about it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that wasn't a thing.
What this reminds me of is there was, I forget what the game was called, but it was the game that came out where it was a guy in a trench coat, and the entire game was just about killing people who were running away from you.
Hatred, yeah, hatred.
Okay, this exactly reminds me of that. And what my question in all this is that, what was the spirit, like what was the intentions behind making this game in particular? Was it just, if it was just to be hateful, you know, if it was just to be derogatory, if it was just to be, you know, demeaning to a race or creed or whatever have you, then I think that's crap. I think that's just, you know.
Well, I suppose in this case we have to assume it is. If it was made in North Korea for North Korean people, obviously the America is the big evil to them, isn't it? So I'm guessing that is exactly the point.
Right. So, I mean, in that regard, you know, I don't think, and while they're not my favorite games in the world, I don't think people who make Call of Duty exactly have hate or spite in their hearts. I think they're just making a game because they're trying to earn a check and, you know, feed their families and whatever have you. They're just game developers. You know, everybody wants to be one. You know, I wanted to be one when I was a kid anyways. So I think there's a difference, maybe not for all of them, but, you know, I don't think that's the general intention.
Well, it depends. You get the times when you can clearly see that a developer is trying to make a statement. so like the aforementioned level in the Call of Duty game where you play as the insurgents. I don't know if that's the right word, and you kill innocent people. That wasn't that. I don't think that was a case of just working for a check. That was trying to make a statement. But that's also why they gave you the option in the game of, look, this is what's going on. If you want to skip this, you can.
Yeah, so that scene, the baddies there were Russian. They were a Russian militaristic faction who were trying to overthrow various parts of the world. The mission was called No Russian, and basically what it was is a bunch of this group were pretending they weren't Russian. They were pretending they were another group. I think they were Americans, possibly, and shooting up a bunch of innocent people in an airport so that there would then be grounds for them to say, you know, we are under attack. This is our authorization. This is our permission to go forward. So, I mean, that was, I don't think that had a political message outside of possibly people who you may perceive are good may in fact be manipulating things behind the scene. But what we're talking about here, this North Korean title, this game developed in North Korea, does in very many ways just amount to some crazy propaganda. But then on the same par, if people are living inside that bubble and they make a game where you're shooting a bad guy in the modern day, they're going to naturally pick that faction they've been told is terrible. And this is like us just randomly grabbing any old throwaway game that's been developed by a bunch of people somewhere. You know, anyone could grab a random game off of one of the storefronts and try and say that it has a certain mission or message. I'm sure that there's a lot of anti-other race games out there that are, you know, amid the deluge on mobile platforms.
And I think that's kind of, for me, that's what the focus is here. Is it's if a game is developed with, you know, hate or spite in its coding, then I just ignore it. I think the best way to deal with those types of games is to ignore their existence, because that's what's going to piss them off more than anything else. It's just ignoring it.
Agreed. My final note on this one, although obviously if anyone else wants to talk about it, feel free. But my final note on this one is that the people who made Hatred, which obviously got a lot of press because everybody was quite offended by this game that had no point, essentially, and was doing what Postal had been doing. The people who made that are now making a very impressive real-time strategy game called Ancestors, which is set in a slightly Norse setting, and it's completely unlike what they made before. It's a really high-quality real-time strategy game with squads and group movements, and it's really impressive. And you would not have been able to tell that it was made by the same developers unless you looked into it.
Yeah, but you know what that is, don't you? That's a classic move. Let's make a completely random game that's massively controversial, because obviously, like as we've discussed before, all news is good news. But when it comes to marketing and things like that, if people are talking about it, it's going to get bought, and that's given them the money to go and make the actual game that they wanted to make.
Wow, such a cynical view, Jesus.
It is, but at the end of the day, it is business.
Jesus, he's only just got over that.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, business is business, and you know some moves are underhanded, shall we say? But it's all business at the end of the day.
Oh, you're probably right. It's kind of disgusting that we can even conceive that notion, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I mean the thing is, I mean, yes, it may be disgusting, but sometimes it's. I mean, I wouldn't blame the developer for doing that. It's kind of the society that we're in now. You have to do what you need to do to get ahead in the market, as it were. It's just society.
Speaking of which, guys, I'm making a cooking game where you feed puppies and kittens to Nazis. It's going to be great.
That sounds good.
I'll be honest with you. As time goes on, I said I had finished talking on this one. We'll have to have a conversation about marketing techniques and stuff like that, because recently the Tokyo 42 launch on PlayStation 4 had a bit of a situation around it that actually wasn't a situation. It was a marketing ploy where the publisher had another developer make up a fake game and say that Tokyo 42 was a clone of Tokyo 41, a long-lost game from kind of the 1980s, and that he should be taken, the publisher should be taken to court for this, etc. And it was clever, and something seemed odd, and the technology wasn't right, but at the same time, I couldn't help but think, even if this is just one of his mates joking around, this is going to wear away at him, and this isn't right, and this isn't fair, and it's not nice if it's someone messing around. If it's somebody actually being malicious or they have a point, then still there's something wrong there. And so I was starting to get concerned for the publisher, thinking that he was being psychologically worn down. And then obviously it turned out that it was a big old marketing ploy, which did get a fair bit of attention. And so does that then further this spiral of sneaky tricks?
No, you see, what you've just described to me sounds awesome, because it's not something that's been done before.
No,
it was a completely new ploy. I mean, and to be honest, in that situation, obviously, he made out that he was being hurt, but he wasn't hurting anyone. He hadn't done anything that was offensive to anyone. The only person it was really affecting, which is a wrestling term, kayfabe, in the story, was him, but it was all made up by him. So I don't really have a problem with that. Well done. Well done to him, sir.
I was just asking Toby if it was on Steam, and apparently it hasn't even made it onto Steam yet. So it's not. It's not even good enough for Steam. That's kind of hilarious.
Excellent.
Unable to get a copy. Despite my best efforts.
Right. So that's the heavy topics for this week. Now let's move on to a few topics that a lot of people are happy about.